Coaches, we're excited to be hosting the 2025 Hoosier Gym Coaching Clinic. The event will take place September 27th in Knightstown, Indiana. We have a great lineup of speakers and presenters, and the day will be packed full of great information and fun. See our website and social media for sign-up information. We hope to see you there. What's up, coaches? Welcome to the United Basketball Plus Coaching and Leadership Podcast. I'm joined today with Coach Gene Heidkamp of Lisle Benet Academy in Lisle, Illinois. Coach, glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Coach, you've got kind of a storied past here in Illinois. So give us your background, where you went to college, what you do now at Lisle, some of your coaching history, and anything in between.
I grew up on the north side of Chicago and went to a high school called St. Patrick High School, where I played for a legendary high school coach named Max Kurland. From there, I went to St. Norbert College right outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin, in De Pere, Wisconsin. And following my experience at St. Norbert, I started teaching and coaching at St. Patrick High School, where I went to school. And I worked 1 year for my high school coach, as I mentioned, Max Kurland. And following that, Coach Mike Bailey, who's another legendary high school coach, he's a Hall of Famer. I was really fortunate to work for two Hall of Famers. I worked for Coach Bailey for 8 more years at that point. Really learned how to coach under Coach Bailey. We're very grateful for that experience. From St. Pat's, I went to Nazareth Academy, which is in LaGrange Park, and I was the head coach there for 3 years. And then I decided to go back to St. Patrick. I went back to St. Pat's for 3 more years between 2005 and 2008, where I was a varsity assistant. And then in 2008, I was fortunate to get the Benet Academy job, and I've been here since 2008, just finished my 17th season. So it's 32 years in the books. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but I've been very fortunate to have the experiences that I've had up to this point.
Now, with all those experiences and just the storied history of basketball in the Chicagoland area, prior to getting to Benet and building up all that experience that you have, who would you say was some of your biggest influences?
Well, Coach Kurland, from a playing standpoint and just giving me a start into coaching, but Coach Bailey would definitely be my mentor. He was somebody who really taught me how to coach. We play man-to-man defense, and we vary what we do offensively. We adapt all the time, but motion has been kind of our backbone. And I learned both those things under Coach. And Coach really, I think, was great at running a program. And when you coach at St. Pat's, you had an opportunity to learn all facets of running a program. And I thought that experience really, really worked well for me. It was very influential, and it's something that's still important to me to this day. So if I was, those two coaches for sure, and some of the assistant coaches that Coach Bailey had with them as well, were really influential. And now I have a great group of coaches that are my friends that I think are influential on my style. Now, I think that's one thing that's really important. I have mentors coming through, but also to have peers that you really respect and trust. And I have coaches that we compete against that I'm very good friends with, that are also serve as sounding boards or influential. And if something happens situationally, you can bounce ideas off them and really respect the feedback that they give you. So again, from a coaching standpoint, from a mentor standpoint, I work for Coach Bailey, and then at this point, in addition to the mentors I had growing up, also my peers that I'm friends with, that I've been coaching with and against for many years now.
So now you're at Benet, and you have all this experience and knowledge. Is there anything that over the years you've thrown out? And basketball seems to be going through cycles. Is there anything that you're hopping on the wagon now? Like, I like the way that this is going. The things we did in the past, I'm tossing aside. Or have you stuck to the things that you like and enjoy and work to that aspect?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think a little bit of both. We always adapt what we're doing to current times, really to fit our personnel. Like, we change from year to year, depending on what we have in our program at that time. The backbone, as I mentioned before, is man-to-man defense. We play pretty much exclusively man-to-man defense, and we do a lot of motion offense, but we adjust a lot. Last year, we ran a lot of ball screen sets, a lot of different back screen sets for our big man. So every year we adapt and change depending on our personnel. But if you looked at our program over the last 17 years, you would say man-to-man defense is a staple, and ball movement and screening off the ball, things that are becoming a little bit less common, are still things that we utilize quite a bit.
And so you have a big man this year. I think one of your famous big men was Frank Kaminsky, who went on to play at Wisconsin. And I know that you have a lot more alumni. With that history of alumni and just guys who I've seen go out and compete, how do you incorporate your alumni back into your program?
That's another great question. I would just take it. I'd even back up a step. Bennett's had great tradition throughout its history in basketball, going back all the way to 1970, if not. The tradition here is really unbelievable, and they've many great teams. Back to a coach named Coach Geist, who brought 3 teams downstate. Bennett has a 102-game home winning streak, which is still the state record. I think that was between 1975 and 1987. And then there were some other coaches that actually kept that going too. Coach Allen was here for a few years, and Coach Marty Gaughan, I believe, for 19 years. So I was really fortunate to follow those guys and try to add on to what they'd already created and established. So our alums that have played for me are really important to me. I do a lot to stay close with them, and I can build on that in a second. But not only those players, but the players going all the way back to 1970. After we were fortunate to win the state championship this year, we had an alumni gathering of former players, and it was really one of the coolest things I've been a part of in my 32 years. Guys all the way back from the class of 1970 through guys that just graduated last year. So to have that alumni basketball community supporting you is a big deal, and I think that I think it's something that I couldn't be prouder to be part of here at Bennett. And as far as things that I utilize, every year we have an alumni gathering on Christmas Eve morning where our guys come back and play, and sometimes we'll have as many as 75 to 100 guys here hanging out and playing. We have an alumni night every year. I reach out constantly to former players and try to stay close. I think relationship building is a huge part of what we do. And I think trying to keep communication with all the former players I think is really, really important. And, again, the most important thing for me as the coach is to represent those guys well. And I think our current players understand that as well. Like I mentioned before, we're lucky enough to win this year. I think it was a huge deal for our current players because they know how much it meant to some of the players that have played here in the past. So we try to tie that all together, and the history from 1970 on is something that's unbelievably important, and our players understand that, and I certainly do. And it's important as anything I do here as the coach.
That's awesome. And you get to go, I think a awesome aspect is you get to go and watch your alumni go on and play in college. So I'm sure you're just on the road all the time. Do you travel a lot to see your alumni play in college? If so, how many games are you traveling to a year to watch former players play?
There's nothing better than to watch your players play at college. It's a little nerve wracking. You're not part of the game. You don't really think about it much when you have them yourself, but you're living and dying with everything when they're playing. And so it's a pretty cool, pretty exciting experience, and it makes you proud as a coach. I don't get to see as many games as I would like. Many of them, if they play where I can watch it on the internet or on TV, or if they're playing locally, being able to travel, it's I get to everything that I possibly can. It's just so hard while those games are going on while we're in our season. So we're so busy. I wish I could see more games in person, but whatever I can get to, I certainly make an attempt to do so.
Just furthering that alumni connection is awesome. So that's one aspect. Your alumni, the people who've come before and built the program and kept the program at a top level. But the players coming in, what kind of feeder system does Bennett have? Is it a group of schools that feed into the high school? And if so, how are you working with those youth coaches to make sure that everything's somewhat connected?
We really don't have a specific feeder system. We have local schools that send kids in our direction. Really, the only interaction that we have with them is in our camps in the summer. So we don't really have, like many schools have a feeder program where their coaches are utilizing or running the same system that their varsity or that their high school teams are running. We don't really have that. We basically start to put that in when they're freshmen here and our teams are selected. But as far as interacting with those individuals, usually it's people that have grown up in our camps here. Those are the kids that you generally show an interest in Benet. And again, they're getting the basics in those camps, but that's really the main tool that we utilize in regard to getting to know some of the kids that will be coming to Benet eventually.
So basically, even if they have been around the program a while, you could say that they're getting a fresh start come freshman year of high school. With that, how big is your staff? How many staff members do you have? How do you delegate that? And then what kind of numbers are you looking at for players coming in to the program as a whole?
We have a very large staff. I think we have between 9 and 10 coaches yearly. Most of them are varsity assistants, but we have 2 coaches on the sophomore level. This year we had 3 coaches on the freshman level. Many of them are volunteer assistants. They want to coach high school basketball, and we're fortunate to have them as part of our program. We have a lot of kids in our program, probably as large a varsity team as just about anybody you're going to find in our area. Last year we had 23 players on our varsity basketball team. So we have a large program, usually about 60 kids in the program every year. We try to give as many kids an opportunity as possible to be a part of it. Playing time wise, obviously that's a whole different story. On a varsity, like last year, I think we played 6 or 7 guys when we got downstate, and I had 15 that were suited up, and some of our players were actually in the stands because you have a certain number that you can have on the bench. But they understand the situation, and they're making a choice. They make that very clear at the beginning, that we have limited spots when we get to the postseason, and do you want to be a part of this? And my expectations for them are the same as anybody. That we're going to hold everyone to a high standard, and the experience is really what matters. So we have a large number of coaches and a big group of players as well in our program, and we try to expand it out to give as many opportunities as possible.
That is great. The opportunities, and at the end of the day, kids just want to be a part of that and that culture. I mean, when you can look a kid in the eye and say, hey, you might not get any minutes this year. You're 23 on a roster of 23, but you stick with this, you're going to be in for one heck of a ride. So do you have tryouts at the beginning of the season? You whittle it down to 23, or?
We do. It changes year to year. 23 is the largest team that we've had. Usually it's somewhere between 19 and 23 was the most, as I mentioned. We definitely have tryouts for our freshman team. We'll normally have about 40 to 50 kids try out, and we usually keep about 22 on that level where we have A and B games. So everybody's playing on that level. Our sophomore team usually has around 15 to 17 kids. In sophomore level is a big adjustment because there's no B games. It's the first time that a lot of kids aren't playing games. So if you're the 11th or 12th man on a sophomore team, you're used to playing in junior high and playing on the freshman basketball team, and now you may not be in a rotation. So it's a big adjustment, but between freshman and sophomore year. And then, when you're moving from sophomore ball to varsity, now you're being incorporated with the best players in the school and 2 classes combined. So junior year, in my opinion, is the toughest for most players going through high school, because for many of them, even the players that played consistently on the freshman sophomore team, many of them aren't going to play a lot or not going to play in the role that they're accustomed to. So it's an adjustment, and if you don't take advantage of your junior year, you won't get the reward that you need your senior year. Junior year is so important, regardless of playing time, for developmental purposes, and I make that very clear to our players that whether they're playing a lot as juniors or not, that it's going to impact their opportunity to play as seniors if they don't get better. So you're constantly striving to get better. And if you get caught up in your situation or in playing time, it's really going to stunt your progress.
Do you find yourself talking a lot with the players about their roles on the team and those roles changing, evolving throughout the season or year to year? How much time do you spend talking roles with players?
I think a lot of them roles work themselves out. When we do discuss that and we talk about it, I think one thing I'm very proud of our kids with is many of them sacrifice a lot to be part of the team. There's not one kid on our team that didn't sacrifice, whether it's number of shots, playing time, different types of areas or situations. That sacrifice is part of being on a team, and especially if you're on a good team with so many good players. That oftentimes you're not going to get everything you want. Well, most of the time you're not going to get everything you want, and how you handle that is a big part of not your own success, but also how our team is going to function. And I was really fortunate this year to have great kids on our team that really bought in. I think we had 4 kids average between 12 and 13 points a game, and some great guys on the bench. We had some good players on the bench that didn't play a lot because they were just playing behind really good players. And, I think a lot of that is, really speaks highly of the kids that we have. And if you're going to have a solid culture, really, I think it's player driven. And I've been lucky that way over these years that I've been at Benet, that our kids, the tradition's kind of handed down year to year. And then the kids do a great job of maintaining it and trying to continue to build it.
I was going to say that at some point, culture becomes a player-led piece, and then your alumni, the seniors pass it down to the juniors, pass it down, but then the alumni come back and talk about the things, and they see those things are still ringing true in your program, and that's always a good piece to have.
Absolutely.
So with all these players, my next question is a 2-part question. First, just in general, off season and in season, how are you preparing players developmentally? And then the second part, I've seen your schedule. I've seen you play some of the toughest opponents that the state of Illinois has to offer, and I'm sure you've played tough opponents out of the state. So in general, what are you doing to prepare your players in the off season and in season, and then preparing them to play some of the best talent that the state has to offer?
Well, as far as off season, the spring is very light for us because our kids are all playing AAU as they should be. We have a strength and conditioning coach that does a good job with all of our athletes, and he runs some lifts for them in the spring. We have some open gyms occasionally toward the end, but I think it's really important that these guys get a break and get away, and they're so busy with their travel schedule. So the spring is a light period for us as a program. June is extremely heavy. In Illinois, we get 20 contact days now. We used to get 25. So all your camps, all your summer games, the live periods, everything that goes in that, the 20 days are as intensive as anything that we do all year. So June is very heavy for us. We got out of school, I think the first weekend of June this year, right around then, and we were busy, up the next couple of weeks, through the live period. So June is important time. It's not only a team building time, but a skill development time. You're trying to utilize those opportunities to get your players better. July and August are quiet. We get back to school. We'll again, they'll work with our strength and conditioning coach, like all our athletes in our school, and then we'll have some open gyms throughout the course of the fall. Really, as far as coaching goes in our state, you're not allowed to do any of it until the season starts, and that we follow the rules with that. So, as far as skill development things in the fall, kids are pretty much on their own for that. They can get in our gym and they can get shots up and work together and things like that. But as far as working with our staff, none of that happens, and really until we get back in the season. So we get to 20 days in June, and then when we start, usually the second Monday of November, it's pretty intensive. And those 2 weeks are huge, from second Monday in November till the Monday of Thanksgiving week, where we start playing. So as far as that goes, that's our off season pretty much in a nutshell. In regard to preparing them for path, we try to schedule as difficult as we make our schedule as difficult as we can. That's the goal. Last year, I think we suffered a little bit through the course of the regular season with some really tough opponents. We lost 5 games, I think, by February 1st against some really good opponents. But I think it paid off for us down the stretch of the season, because we had played such a good schedule. And we saw teams in the state tournament. There was really not a particular team that was overwhelming for us. It was teams we had seen at Pontiac, teams we had seen when sides collide, teams we had seen in our non-conference schedule, some of the shootouts we were in. And I think playing that schedule, it hurt us a little bit with our seed because we were only a 3 seed in our sectional because we lost some games there. But I think it helped us in the long run to have that experience and to, learn from that experience. I think our kids did a good job of really playing their best basketball down the stretch. So, my philosophy is, not being afraid to lose some games during the season, hoping that it'll pay off for you down the stretch.
And I've seen you play at Pontiac, and you'll see some of the same teams at Pontiac that you guys will see in the postseason, and they're always a battle the first time around. I had a high school coach that said it's always hard to beat a good team twice. So in all these big games that you play, speak to playing in those big games and the crowd atmosphere. I know before we hopped on, you said a few years back you played in front of 8,000 people at University of Chicago, I think it was, and speak to the crowd atmosphere that you play in.
Yeah, the game I was referring to, we played Simeon, who's a legendary program in Illinois, one of the all-time great programs. We played them at UIC Pavilion in front of 8,000 people. They were number 1 at the time, and I think we were number 2, and they had a really strong team, and we had some really good players too. And it was just a great atmosphere and a great game. It's a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime game to coach in, and it was early on in my experience here at Benet. That experience is still talked about quite a bit, here. We've had some really great atmospheres throughout the course of the last 17 years. We had to play at a school called St. Joseph High School, which is another legendary program in the history of our state, with Coach Pingator, who's the all-time winningest coach in our state. We played them in a conference championship game my second year at Benet, and the gym was just rocking. It was, again, decent-sized gym, but you couldn't get in. The doors were closed by the start of the varsity game, and just one of those another experience that you're going to remember the rest of your life. We host a shootout here. We don't run it and or organize the teams or anything. Somebody else does that and does an unbelievable job with it. But we host a shootout here where they play it here. It's called When Sides Collide. It happens in I think it's usually the last Saturday in January every year. And we played Kenwood in 2023. And that was a great environment here, where it completely sold out. And I think they were number 1 at the time. And those crowds, those are experiences that our kids will remember really the rest of their lives. And that's kind of what you're doing it for. That's kind of one of our goals in our program, is to try to provide as many experiences for our players as we possibly can. So playing in those games, are not only, they're a lot of fun, but they're also great experience for your guys in case they make a run in the state tournament or get in situations like that. Again, that experience is invaluable. The crowd noise, communicating on the floor, communicating with the coaches, having that type of pressure on you, I think is something that has really served us well when we've had opportunities to play deeper in the state tournament.
For sure. Are your games, your home games, streamed through, say, NFHS or another website?
I believe so. I think you can pretty much get any of the home games. I think that's a big change since COVID for just about every school, is that you can probably find just about any high school game that you want within reason online. And it's a great thing for people to be able to see your teams. It's also a little tough with crowd numbers and things. You as a coach and your players, you want as many people in the gym as you can. You appreciate everybody following you, especially those people who can now follow you from far away. Locally, you want to have as big a crowds as you can. And I think that's part of what makes high school basketball special, is getting a big student crowd and just community members to come out and support the team. So I'm all for the online aspect of it. I also hope it doesn't hurt in-person attendance too much either, because that's a big part of the experience for the kids.
I would agree. At the smaller school level, I think it's hurt the crowd atmosphere more so than maybe at the larger school level. What about radio? Your guys' games broadcast on the radio at all?
They are not, as far as I'm aware. So no, I think it's just pretty much our home games are pretty much streamed in a couple different avenues. I'm not even 100% sure as to what our school utilizes, to be honest with you, but I know that they're streamed for people. It's nice for people who maybe some of the players whose grandparents live far away, or just some of our alums that are watching from all over the country. That's a pretty cool aspect to it. I'm trying to get that balance to keep the crowds where they need to be while still having that opportunity for people to watch it online. I think is really important. And I think you have to work at keeping crowds. I think that's a big part of it. I'm very fortunate to have the support that we have here in our community, but I think we also have to work at it. Like, our students have to be good classmates. I think they have to represent themselves well in the community. I think the coaches have to do a lot to try to generate excitement, or to make sure that our student body and our community members feel valued and appreciated. That they're a big part of the success that we have when we play at home. And I think that takes some work, and I think it takes attention to it. And I make sure our kids know, if you're not handling yourself the right way in class, or you're walking down the hallway and you think you're better than somebody else, then you're not being the part of the community that you need to be a part of. And if you want people to come and support you, you need to get out to the other sports, so the other sporting events. You need to do the things. You need to be an active member of the school community. And I think that's a cool thing about where I'm at here at Benet is I think the athletes and the non-athletes, support most of the teams, and that I think it makes it special for the kids that are involved in those events.
That is huge. School spirit's probably one of those things that really hit the floor during that COVID time frame, and is just now maybe starting to creep back up. And because of things that are coming in, like we mentioned, the streaming of games online, some schools are fully embracing that, where that they'll have, or they have started some audio visual classes, and they have student ran broadcasts from the live stream. I know there's a high school near me, a smaller high school, and their live stream is not just a camera going back and forth. They have students broadcasting the color commentating the games.
No, it's great.
What's your relationship with officials like?
I like to think it's really solid. I think it's an important part of our game, especially on the high school level, is that relationships between coaches and officials need to be positive. And I think for the most part, I've tried to do that. I have great respect for the officials that work our games and the officials that work in our area here in the Chicagoland area. And you go down to Pontiac, and there's great officials there as well. And even through the run of the state tournament, you get a chance to see great officials, sometimes ones you've never even seen work before, that are on your game. And I think it's a big part of it. I think we're losing officials, and we need to do a lot as coaches to get more officials in the game. And part of that is how we treat them, with the respect that they deserve. And these guys are working really hard. They're professional. They're not getting paid a lot of money, and they're doing it for the love of it. And I think we, coaches that I know really appreciate that. And I think that's something that relationships with officials is a really important, for our generation, really important aspect that we did take care of, because we need good officials, good young officials that want to get in our game and move up the ranks and do this for 30 to 50 years, like some of the great older officials that we have right now. So I'm proud of this fact that in my 32 years in regular games, I've never gotten a technical foul. So again, maybe I'm bragging a little bit with that, but that's probably the one thing in my career that I'm proud of, and I'll probably get one next season now. Now, I just said that publicly, but and I think it's important to me that and that doesn't mean I haven't deserved one. That's for sure. It's just one of these things where, I tell our players, if I'm not going to get them, then you better not be getting them. And I think that's important. I don't think they help you win games. We grew up under the mentality that you needed to motivate your team by going and getting a technical foul or protecting your players. And I really feel like if my players need me to get a technical foul to know that I've got their backs, or that I'm going to protect them, that I'm not very good at what I want to do. So maybe that's a little bit naive, or a little, whatever would happen to be. But it's something that I take a lot of pride in, is that respect between officials and coaches, and hopefully I'm demonstrating that. And there's times where I wish I handled myself better. Believe me, I'm far from perfect, but I do think that aspect of that relationship is important. And I think coaches in my generation and younger need to do the job to make sure that we get the officials that we need in our game, and that we keep them in there, that we're not chasing officials out by our conduct or all the other conduct that can happen during the course of games or a season.
I agree. I think having good relationships with officials is paramount. One bright side, it's got two pieces here. I think I read a report that the number of patched officials increased during last season, just across the board. And then number two, something that I took a lot of positive from this summer. I coach AAU. We're at Bloomington Normal at Illinois Wesleyan for a tournament, and we were up in the Chicagoland area. And I saw a lot of young officials at those tournaments who were being guided. You could see them during timeouts or stoppage of play, an older official going and guiding them. So I think that's a bright spot to the fact that there has been a decline in shortage of officials. So you've won over 400 games. This might be a loaded question, but of those 400, what was your, and it might not even be a win, but what's been your favorite game to coach in?
Wow, that's a tough question. I don't know that I could pick one out of all of them. Some of the games I mentioned before were important because of the significance to our program at the time. I talked about the St. Joe's game. We'd won the conference championship that year by winning that game, and I think that was somewhat unexpected. And that was very early on in my tenure here at Bennett. That one sticks out as far as an early game. The Simeon game was a huge one because of the atmosphere we talked about. But it was a non-conference game, so at the end of the day, the significance really wasn't all that important. We won the Proviso West Holiday Tournament in the 50th anniversary. I think that was in the December of 2010. That was again early on in my years here at Bennett. That was a big one because of the history of the Proviso West tournament. And then I could go on and on as far as what some of our kids have allowed our program, and I'm grateful for the opportunities they've allowed me to be a part of. But obviously the last game that we won to win our first state championship, in March of this year, is one that's going to always, stay with me just because of the significance of the game. Again, I hate to, start picking random games here and there, but, that game obviously had a lot of significance. It was a great game. Warren came right back at us and had us on the ropes at the end. It could have went either way. And we have lost 3 state championship games in the last 10 years. So to finally win one, felt pretty good. It was, a little bit of a relief for me personally, but I was excited for our kids and really excited for all the players that had played here before. So that game will always have special significance because of what it meant to our program and our school.
I knew that was going to be a loaded question going in, and every year brings a new special game or grouping of special games, and maybe you could just go a special run. So, I knew that was going to be a loaded question going in. To get to those games, though, games are just games. The most important piece are the practices leading up to it. What does a traditional practice look like for you?
It depends on the time of the year. Obviously, our practices are longer at the beginning of the year. We have a lot to get in. We're competing. We're trying to establish spots in the rotation and the starting lineup and those types of things. So the first 2 weeks are pretty intensive. We compete a lot in practice. There's a lot of skill development involved and a lot of implementing our offensive and defensive system. As we start playing games, and here in Illinois, they've kind of changed in the last 6 or 7 years. You can play as many as 31 games in the regular season, and the season's even shorter than it was. So there's a lot more game prep involved, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Again, it is what it is, so you adjust. As we start playing games, you have to manage your team. You have to figure out when you can go full boat in practice and when you have to take it easier. When we start playing games, especially later, early on in the season, we'll have a combination of both hard practices and some walkthroughs to get ready for games. Down the stretch of the season, especially in February, we go very light, and I've changed. That was not how we did it back in the old days. because I'm trying to not manage necessarily their legs, even though that's part of it, is I want to keep everybody healthy. I think a big part of the state tournament run is health. A couple of years ago, we lost one of our best players in the semifinal game downstate, and it was tough not having him the rest of that game and in the championship game. I could live with that because it happened in a game. If it happened in practice in March or happened in practice in February where we're doing a rebounding drill or one of those things, I would have had a harder time with that. So I've kind of loosened up a little bit in my older age here with what I do. What we do in the first half of the season is much more intensive than what we do down the stretch. And my point to our players is if you're not going to block out, then you're not going to go very far. We don't do a lot of live blockout drills, later in the season or loose ball drills or things along those lines. It's more of, going through defensive game plans, executing our offense, and a ton of shooting and a ton of skill development. So getting back to your question, we early on in the year we try to cover all facets of the game. We're working on skill development, a lot of shooting every day, regardless of the time of the year. Obviously, work a lot on competing, especially defensively, and then we want to get better offensively. Our offensive execution tends to get better through the course of the season, and even tweaking some of what we run based on success or failure during the early part of the season is important as we go through the year.
And so in your walkthroughs, I'm assuming that's where you handle your film and your scout. What kind of things are you doing with film and scouting for an upcoming game?
Yeah, we're old school this way. I probably need to get with the times here, but we go through as many of the opponent's sets and based on out of bounds. We play man-to-man in both. So our kids don't necessarily they don't love it, but they understand it, that if they're going to, the one possession might be the difference in winning and losing a game. And if you can take a team out of a set or a based on out of bounds play, from preparation, that could be the difference in, a 1-point game in a state championship. So it's something that our kids have really learned to appreciate. They don't love the grind of going through all that in the practices, but they understand it. So, and they know that it's valuable. So we'll spend, if we don't have as many practices in between games as we would like anymore, but even if we're playing back to back, we'll come in the morning and go through our opponent's offensive sets and their base and out of bounds plays and anything that we needed to tweak offensively to be, productive in the later that day. As a matter of fact, I think one thing I've learned a little bit in experience in the state tournament, if you're fortunate enough to get downstate, is it's really, you don't see as many teams playing back to back. They play it, but not with the caliber of teams you're going to have to play on a Friday and a Saturday. So really, for a state championship game, you're getting a walkthrough to get ready for, on paper, what's the biggest game of the season. And if you don't have experience doing that through the season, I think it could be, a little tough, or you're just going to go in and play. And I think that's one thing that this year coincidentally worked well for us, is we played so many good teams on Saturdays after Friday conference games, that I thought when we got to that downstate, we got in that situation, that I think our kids handled the prep on that Saturday before the Warren game about as well as they could, because they had experience doing it throughout the course of the season. So I thought that was really important.
So that is a good thing. Good point. Practicing how you could potentially play at the end of the season. I think that's the old adage. You practice how you play how you practice. Do you find yourself practicing how your players conduct themselves on the bench? Do you have anything like that as a culture piece? Like, we're going to keep this even keel, or we'll celebrate the good things and not bring up the bad. Do you practice any of that at all?
I think they're, you want to give them a little bit of freedom, but I think you want them to treat opponents and officials and everybody involved with respect. I think that's kind of what the line is. We don't really have any hard, fast rules. It's more of, handling yourself the right way without taking all the fun away from it. They are teenagers. The game has changed a lot. Having the opportunity to express yourself. When I was starting, that would have been looked upon as, something that was an absolute no-no or, disrespectful. I think that the definition of what's respectful has probably evolved a little bit, but, I think as long as it meets, what I would think would be respectful conduct in regard to how you interact with officials and how you interact with your opponents, I give them a little bit of freedom. So we don't really sit down and talk too much about that. I think the great thing about the kids that I've been lucky to coach is they're into the game on their own. I don't generate enthusiasm or false enthusiasm. Everything that comes our way through our program is player led, and I think a lot of it is sincere, most of it, if not all of it. And, when you see, like I went back and watched the very end of the state championship game. And again, I know that's a little different situation than just a regular game, but to see the guys that didn't play running off the bench at the end was probably as exciting to me as, anything that happened during the course of that, because it just showed how much it meant to, those guys. So, again, they're a big part of it, whether they're getting the minutes or not, is how they handle themselves on the bench, how they interact with their teammates. And we tell our players all the time, they're in rotation, is you're representing those guys. A lot of those guys would love to trade places with you. So you make sure that you're aware of that as you go out, and how you handle yourself and how you play and the effort that you give and how you treat your teammates. So, I think we don't really have any hard, fast rules on conduct. It's just more, if I saw something that I didn't care for, I would address it for sure.
Fantastic. So, keeping with the practice, got a couple more questions for you before we wrap up here. Practice-wise, what is your favorite drill?
Well, it's interesting because I mentioned rebounding, that we don't do a lot of it down the stretch. My favorite drill is what they used to call, I think, the college drill. They used to call it the war drill, where you would basically every man for themselves on the glass, is about as physical a drill as you could be a part of. And you would keep the ball as long as you were able to actually possess the ball. So if the ball went through the net and you got the offensive rebound, you would keep it and score. Our kids absolutely love that drill. And it's something that we utilize a lot early in the year, especially if we don't feel like we're getting after it enough. And offensive rebounding is a huge component of our program. It's a huge emphasis. We send 4 to the offensive glass. So that drill kind of fits with what we're trying to do. I love every minute of the drill. It is my favorite drill. And it's also one that I do not utilize down the stretch, as we talked about before, because at that point in February, if you're not going to block out, we're not going to go very far anyway. So it's more of a drill I use earlier in the year to establish what we want on the offensive glass. And I love every minute of it, but I use it very selectively as the season goes on.
It's funny because I was talking to another coach and I asked the same question, and war drill was there immediately before I even got the question out. War drill. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Last question here. What is your best advice for young coaches?
My advice would be, and this is just from personal experience, and I don't profess to have the answers, but to trust your path, wherever it takes you in regard to your experiences early on in your career. I was an assistant for 12 years and a head coach for 4 before I was fortunate enough to be a head varsity coach and have a winning season. And I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything, because I learned so much from them. Even if you don't realize at the time, you're learning as much as you are. Like my experiences as an assistant, when a lot of people in my age were really pushing to get head jobs or anxious, and kind of keep your feet on the ground where you're at and embrace the role that you're in and be patient. With that being said, some people are ready for head jobs really, really, at early stages of their career. So it's not, I guess my point is, whatever your path is, embrace it. And if it's being an assistant for a long time before you get a head job, or, coaching some teams that maybe aren't as talented as some of the competition that you have to play against, whatever would happen to be, that, to keep grinding and keep, trust your path and keep working at it. And I think, as I said, it took me, I think it was 16th year before I had a winning season as a head varsity coach. And I wouldn't trade those first 15 for anything. I think that's a big part of my experiences. There's a lot of humbling things that happen in the coaching profession, that's for sure. And, I think that's something that keeps you grounded and you learn from. I'd also say have great mentors. I've been lucky to have so many mentors, some of the ones I mentioned previously, that have taught me so much, and they're there for you lifelong. And I think having great peers, like I mentioned, I think the game has changed a little bit to the point where you can be great friends with your opponents. When you're playing each other, you want to beat them and they want to beat you as bad as anything. But that it doesn't mean that has to carry away from when you leave the game, that stays on the floor. And I think I've got some really good friends that have been great to me that help me a lot, to grow as a coach and continue to get better. And I think that's important for young coaches to find people in their age group or their generation that they'll be friends with for 20 or 30 years that can continue to help them and push them to be better coaches.
Love the insight, Coach. I seen you play. I know you I know that you run a top class program. Love watching you play. Look forward to seeing you play down in Pontiac again this year and hopefully making another run into the postseason this upcoming year. Above all, I appreciate your time hopping on here today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Look forward to future conversations. And again, good luck this upcoming season.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Coaches, thank you for listening to the United Basketball Plus Coaching and Leadership Podcast. For all things United Basketball Plus, visit us at our website, www.unitedbasketballplus.com, or on X at UnitedBBallPlus.